For many years she lived in silence. The alien woman's home was not a house but broken ruins on the edge of a dying forest. Her people had left long ago, leaving behind only whispers of her name. To them, she was cursed, untouchable, unwanted. And so, she forgot what warmth even felt like. Every day was the same for her. She woke up to the cold wind cutting against her skin. She gathered water from a small stream. She hunted small animals to survive. But she never spoke, never laughed, never touched another living soul. It had been so long since she felt the brush of another hand that even the idea of touch frightened. Her heart was wrapped in ice, and the silence of the ruins became her only companion. The villagers in the nearby town told stories about her. They said a ghost woman lived in the forest. Some claimed she was a monster in disguise. Others whispered that anyone who touched her would fall into endless misfortune. Because of this, no one came near. Children were warned never to wander too far. Hunters avoided her part of the forest. The ruins became a place of fear, not a home. But the woman was real. She was not a ghost, not a monster, only forgotten. Each night, she sat by the fire, staring into the flames. She remembered the time when her people still held her close. She remembered the sound of voices, the feeling of arms around her. But those memories were fading. Now, when she tried to recall the warmth of a touch, her chest ached with emptiness. She pressed her hands together, pretending they belonged to someone else. It was the only way she could trick her heart into believing she was not fully alone. And then one evening, the silence broke. A new sound echoed in the ruins' footsteps. They were heavy, steady, not like the quick steps of frightened villagers. The woman froze, her heart beating faster. She thought perhaps her people had returned. But deep down she knew they never would. Instead, she saw him, a human traveler, dressed in dust-covered clothes, carrying a pack across his shoulders. His eyes searched the ruins carefully, as though he had expected to find something here. The woman stepped back into the shadows. She had not seen a human this close before, only from far away, near the borders of the forest. Now one stood within reach. She felt panic rise in her chest. Would he try to harm her? Would he chase her away, like the others? Or worse, would he touch her and bring misfortune upon himself? The curse, the whispers, they filled her mind again. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. The human stopped near the fire pit. He noticed signs of life ashes still. Warm tools scattered nearby. He called out softly, "Is anyone here?" His voice was gentle, not commanding, not cruel. The alien woman held her breath, pressing herself against the broken wall. She told herself not to answer, not to show herself. But her silence was betrayed by the trembling of her hands. The human turned his head, sharp eyes noticing the faint movement in the shadows. "I mean no harm," he said, lifting his hand slowly to show he carried no weapon. Still, she did not step forward. Instead, she whispered under her breath, too quiet for him to hear. Her voice cracked from disuse. She had not spoken to anyone in years. The human waited, his expression calm. Most people would have fled by now, but he remained. It was as if he could sense her fear and wanted only to ease it. The woman finally took a single step into the dim light. Her eyes glowed faintly in the fire's reflection. Her clothes were worn, her skin pale from years without sunlight. The human gasped softly, not from fear but from surprise. You're real," he whispered. For years he had heard the stories of the ghost woman in the ruins. But seeing her now, she was not a ghost, only someone who looked lost, broken, and painfully alone. The woman's lips parted, but no words came out. Her voice trembled inside her, locked away by years of silence. The human did not press her. Instead, he slowly reached into his pack and placed a small piece of bread on the stone near the fire. Then he stepped back, keeping distance. "I'll leave this here," he said, his voice low and careful. "You don't have to take it, but you look like you need it." The woman stared at the bread, her stomach twisted with hunger, but her fear was stronger. She looked at the human, at his steady eyes, and felt something unfamiliar. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something warmer, something dangerous, something she had not felt in years. Hope. The ruins were silent again. But now the silence carried weight. The human remained nearby. Watching the fire, the woman stood in the shadows, torn between stepping forward and running away. For the first time in years, another living soul had reached out, and deep inside her heart, the ice began to crack, just a little. The human traveler did not leave the ruins that night. Instead, he built a small fire and sat near it, keeping his distance from the shadow where the alien woman still stood. He did not chase her. He did not force her to speak. He simply waited. As if patience itself was his language, the woman kept watching him from the darkness. Her heart pounded in confusion. Why did this human stay? Others before him had run away at the very sight of her. Some shouted, some cursed her name, some threw stones. But this one was different. He did not call her curse. He only sat there, as if her presence was reason enough to remain. The firelight painted his face in soft colors. There were lines of travel and hardship around his eyes. Yet when he looked into the shadows, his gaze was calm. Not the look of fear, but of curiosity. The woman turned her head away quickly. She told herself not to trust it, not to believe in kindness. Kindness had betrayed her before, but no matter how much she tried, she kept glancing back at him. The silence between them became heavier than words. At last, the human spoke. "My name is Aaron," he said softly. He did not expect her to answer, but he hoped the sound of a name might bridge the distance. The woman's lips trembled, though she did not speak. Her name had not been spoken aloud in years. She almost forgot how it sounded. But hearing him give his own name stirred something inside her. It reminded her that names were not curses. They were beginnings. The night passed slowly. Aaron kept the fire alive while the woman remained half hidden in the ruins. When the morning light touched the broken stones, she was still there. Her eyes were tired but alert. Watching the human carefully, Aaron stood, stretched his back, and reached into his pack again. He placed dried fruit on the same stone where he had left the bread. He smiled faintly. "For you, if you want it." Then he turned and walked toward the edge of the ruins. He did not look back. The woman blinked in shock. He was leaving? Just like that? She stepped closer, her bare feet scraping against stone. The fruit was simple, but her stomach growled. Hesitation froze her hand for a moment. What if it was poisoned? What if it was a trick? But hunger overcame fear. She picked up the fruit and tasted it. It was real, sweet, warm with the memory of another's care. For the first time in years, food felt like a gift, not just survival. That day she thought of the human often. She told herself not to, but the thought returned again. And again, would he come back? Why would he bother? What did he see in a woman abandoned by everyone? The answer came at dusk. The sound of footsteps returned, steady and unafraid. Her chest tightened as she recognized him. Aaron walked into the ruins as if it was the most natural thing. He greeted the silence like an old friend. "I thought I'd check on you," he said. His tone was calm, almost casual, but to her, his words carried weight heavier than stone. This time, she did not hide fully in the shadows. Her body leaned a little closer to the fire's glow. Aaron noticed but did not mention it. Instead, he sat again and pulled out tools from his pack. He worked quietly, repairing the strap of his bag. The woman studied him with suspicion. Why did he act as if she belonged here, as if she were not dangerous? She found herself whispering a question she had not planned. Why? Her voice cracked, the word barely audible. But Aaron looked up quickly. His eyes widened slightly. Not with fear, but with recognition. "You spoke," he said softly. Almost smiling, she lowered her gaze, ashamed of the broken sound. Still, Aaron answered her question. "Because I don't believe in curses," he said. "People fear what they don't understand, but fear is not the same as truth." The woman's chest tightened. Her people had called her cursed for so long that the word had carved itself into her soul. Now a stranger dismissed it with simple words. Could it really be so easy? No, she told herself, he is only pretending. Soon he will see the truth. Soon he will leave. Yet part of her wanted to believe him. That night the storm winds rose, rain tapped against the stones. Erin made sure the fire stayed strong. The woman sat closer than before, still wrapped in silence but no longer hiding fully. She felt the heat of the flames touch her skin. And though he did not reach for her, she felt his presence like a second fire. Dangerous, warm, impossible to ignore. When dawn came again, Erin prepared to leave. He looked back at the shadows where she sat. "I'll return," he said simply. His words struck her harder than she expected. No one had ever promised to come back. Promises were foreign to her lonely world. She did not answer. But her hands trembled as if trying to hold the moment. As Erin walked away, she whispered her own name for the first time in years. It felt strange, almost painful on her tongue, but she wanted to remember it now, because maybe, just maybe someone else might remember it too. And so the forgotten woman waited. The ruins felt less empty, the silence less heavy. For the first time in years, she did not fear the footsteps in the dark. She hoped for them. The ruins had never known footsteps that returned again and again, but Erin's did every evening. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the broken stones, his figure appeared at the edge of the forest. The woman, once certain one would ever seek her, now found herself waiting. Her heart beat faster each time she heard his approach. Though she tried to hide it even from herself, at first, she kept her distance. When he sat near the fire, she remained in the farthest corner. When he spoke, she answered only with silence. But Erin did not stop coming. Each day he carried something simple. A piece of food, a tool, sometimes only words. He asked no questions she could not bear. He demanded nothing from her. Instead, he left space for her silence. As if he understood it, slowly the silence began to shift. One evening, when he left a small flask of water on the stone, she whispered, "Why bring this?" Her voice was faint, unused to speaking. Erin looked at her and shrugged lightly. "Because you need it," she frowned, unused to answers that carried no hidden weight. Most who once spoke to her gave kindness with sharp edges, but his words were soft, and for the first time, she did not push them away. Another night, he worked on repairing a broken knife. The firelight glinted on the blade as he sharpened it. She watched from the shadows, her eyes following every careful motion of his hands. "You could sell that in the village," she finally said, surprising even herself. He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I thought you might need it more than they do." Her lips parted in confusion. No one had given her anything without expecting something in return. And yet, here he was, placing the finished knife gently on the stone between them. She did not take it that night, her fear of trust still stronger than her hunger for kindness. But when he returned the next day, the knife was gone, hidden safely. In her corner, Erin said nothing, only smiled when he noticed. That small smile unsettled her heart, making her feel both weak and warm. The days turned into a quiet rhythm. Erin came, he sat by the fire. He spoke gently. The woman listened, sometimes offering a word, sometimes only silence. And though the walls around her heart were strong, tiny cracks began to show. Cracks where warmth slipped through. Cracks where she remembered what it was like to not be entirely alone. One night, the wind howled against the ruins, carrying the sound of distant thunder. The woman sat closer to the fire than usual, her body shivering despite the heat. Erin noticed, his brows furrowing. "You're cold," he said, pulling off his cloak. He placed it on the stone between them, careful not to move too close. Her eyes widened, her hands curling tightly in her lap. "No," she whispered sharply, her voice trembling. "I can't." Erin tilted his head. "It's only a cloak, it won't harm you." But she shook her head, fear burning in her chest. Her people's voices echoed inside her. Cursed, dangerous, untouchable. She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. Aren did not press her. He simply left the cloak where it was and turned his gaze back to the fire. Hours later, when he closed his eyes to rest, the woman's shaking hands finally reached out. She pulled the cloak around her shoulders. It was warm, carrying the scent of earth, smoke, and something human, something she did not realize she had missed so desperately. For a long time, she sat there, pressing her face into the fabric. It was not touch, but it was close. Close enough to melt a little more of the ice inside her. The next morning, Aren noticed the cloak draped over her shoulders, but he said nothing. He only gave her a small nod, and she looked away quickly, her cheeks burning with a strange heat she had not felt in years. That evening, when Aren prepared to leave, the woman found herself whispering before he could turn, "Why do you keep coming back?" Her voice was stronger now, though still uncertain. Aren looked at her for a long moment before answering, "Because no one should live alone forever." His words struck her like a storm, shaking the walls she had built around her heart. No one should live alone. Yet she had, for years, forgotten by everyone. And now here was someone who saw her, spoke to her, returned to her. That night, she did not retreat fully into the shadows. She sat near the fire, still at a distance, but close enough that the warmth touched her skin. Aren said nothing about it, but she saw the small flicker of relief in his eyes. The silence between them had changed. It was no longer heavy with fear. It was lighter, filled with something fragile, something that felt like the beginning of trust. As the flames crackled and the storm clouds drifted away, the woman realized something for the first time in years. Her loneliness did not feel endless for the first time. She was not waiting for the silence to swallow her. Instead, she was waiting for his footsteps to return again. And the thought both terrified and comforted her. The walls she had built around herself were beginning to break, and she no longer knew if she could stop them. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, swallowing the last of the sun. The ruins shook under the weight of the thunder, and rain poured down in heavy sheets. The woman sat near the fire, trying to shield herself, but the wind tore through the broken walls, scattering sparks into the night. Aren worked quickly, pulling stones and broken wood to shield the flames. "Stay close to the fire," he called out, his voice barely rising above the storm. The woman hugged herself, trembling as cold water soaked her thin clothes. Her body felt weak, exhaustion pressing down on her from days of hunger and years of loneliness. The storm was not just outside, it was inside her chest. Her strength failed her, and her knees gave way. She collapsed against the stone floor, her breath shallow. Aren turned instantly, his eyes widening as he saw her fall. He rushed forward without hesitation. "Hey, stay with me." He pulled her up gently, wrapping his cloak around her trembling body. The warmth of his arms pressed against her for the first time. Her entire world froze, not from the storm, but from the shock of his touch. No one had touched her in years. The curse, the whispers, the fear, it had always kept people away. But now, a human held her without hesitation. Her body shook violently, not from cold, but from the flood of emotions she could not control. Her mind screamed to push him away, to protect him from the curse her people spoke of. But her heart burned with something she thought she had forgotten: warmth. She pushed weakly at his chest, her voice breaking. "No. Don't touch me. You'll suffer." Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't shed in years. Aren held her steady, his gaze firm yet kind. "I don't care about curses," he said, his voice low but strong. "I won't let you die in this storm." The words pierced her fear like lightning. His arms tightened around her just enough to keep her safe. The cloak wrapped both of them in fragile shelter. The rain hammered down, but inside that moment, the cold could not reach her. For the first time in so long, she felt human warmth, not imagined, not remembered, but real. Her trembling slowed. Her breathing steadied, and she leaned, just slightly, into his chest. Her tears mixed with the rain on her face. But for once, she did not hide them. When the storm finally weakened, The ruins were silent again, except for the crackle of the struggling fire. Erin eased her back onto a dry corner of stone. Still keeping the cloak around her, she sat there. In silence, staring at her hands, her skin still burned with the memory of his touch. It felt impossible, like a dream she had no right to hold on to. Erin sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her. "You're not cursed," he said softly. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that shattered something inside her. No one had ever said that to her, not once, not even when she was young. Her people had condemned her so easily, and she had carried their judgment like chains. But now, a stranger looked at her as if she was only human, only alive. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You don't understand. If they find you touching me, they'll—" Her words trailed off into silence. She could not finish because deep down, she feared it more than anything, not his suffering, but losing this warmth. Erin leaned forward slightly, his expression steady. "Then let them say what they want," he replied. "I see you, not their lies." Her chest tightened painfully. The walls she had built for years were crumbling with every word he spoke. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the beat of her heart fast, alive, desperate. For so long she had told herself she was empty, untouchable, forgotten. But here was proof that she was not. Her hand lifted slowly, hesitantly, before she could stop herself. Her fingers brushed the edge of his cloak where it rested on his shoulder. It was barely a touch, lighter than the rain. But to her, it was the heaviest step she had ever taken. Erin did not flinch, did not pull away. He simply held her gaze, steady and warm. "You see?" he said quietly. Nothing happened. Her lips parted in disbelief, her hand trembling against the cloak. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe he might be right. The curse was not real. The only chains had been the ones inside her heart. She withdrew her hand quickly, fear still battling against hope. But the damage was done. The ice inside her had cracked beyond repair. Her walls could no longer fully stand. That night, when Erin finally rested, she sat awake beside the fire, her cloak still wrapped around her shoulders, her hands still burning. From the memory of touching his, every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice, felt his warmth. The forgotten alien woman was no longer only surviving, she was remembering what it meant to feel alive. And though the fear inside her whispered warnings, another voice grew louder. A voice that told her she could not stay in the shadows forever. For the first time in years, she wanted more, and that terrified her most of all. The storm had passed, but its memory stayed inside the ruins. The air smelled of wet stone and burnt wood, and the ground was still damp underfoot. Erin sat by the fire, drying his pack, while the woman sat wrapped in his cloak, silent as always. But something inside her had changed. The memory of his arms holding her through the storm still clung to her skin. Her heart had felt warmth for the first time in years, and now it refused to forget. She stared at her trembling hands, every nerve burned with fear and longing. She had allowed herself to feel touch again, even for a brief moment. But the fear remained, fear of the truth she had hidden for so long, the truth her people had carved into her life like a scar. Erin's voice broke the silence, gentle as always. "You don't have to tell me anything," he said, placing another piece of wood on the fire. "But I can see something is hurting you." His words pierced her chest like an arrow. No one had cared enough to notice her pain before. No one had given her space to speak if she wished. Her lips parted, then closed again. It felt impossible. Yet the weight inside her was too heavy to carry alone anymore. She drew a slow, shaky breath. "My people left me," she whispered. Her voice cracked as though each word had to fight through years of silence. Erin looked at her, his expression calm, patient. "Why?" he asked softly, not with judgment, but with curiosity. The woman lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. "They believed I carried a curse," she said. Her fingers clenched the cloak tighter around her body. "They said anyone who touched me would suffer. Anyone who stayed near me would fall into ruin." Her voice shook harder as old memories clawed their way back. They abandoned me to die here, alone. And for years, I believed them. The fire popped, the flames flickering against her face. Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. She had buried these words deep inside, never speaking them, never daring to. Now they spilled out, broken and raw. I watched them leave. One by one, I begged them not to go, but they looked at me as if I was already dead. I was only a child when they cursed me with their fear, and since that day, no one has touched me. No one has spoken my name. Her chest heaved, the weight of years pressing down on her as she finally confessed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I forgot what warmth felt like. I forgot what it meant to be alive. Aaron's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists against his knees. Anger burned in his eyes, not at her, but at the cruelty she had endured. Slowly, carefully, he moved closer, closing the space between them. She flinched, her breath catching. But he stopped just short of touching her. Look at me, he said gently. Her eyes lifted, shimmering with fear and tears. You are not cursed, he said firmly. You are alive, you are here, and nothing about you brings misfortune. Her breath broke, a sob catching in her throat. You don't understand, she cried softly. They all believed it. They left me because of it. How can one human say it is not true when all of them said it was? Aaron's gaze softened, but his voice did not waver. Because I don't see a curse. I see a woman who was abandoned by cowards too afraid to face their own fear. And if your people were wrong about you once, they can be wrong again. His words struck deep into her heart. She trembled, fighting the storm inside her. And before she could stop herself, she whispered, Then why are you not afraid to touch me? The question hung in the air, fragile and heavy. Aaron did not hesitate. He reached out and took her hand in his, slowly but firmly. Her eyes widened, her body froze. Every part of her expected the curse to fall. She waited for pain, for disaster, for some shadow to rise, but nothing happened. Her hand rested in his warm, steady, alive. Her tears fell freely now, spilling down her cheeks. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice breaking. Aaron squeezed her hand gently. There's nothing to understand. You are not cursed. You were only made to believe it. And I will prove it as many times as it takes. She collapsed into sobs. The sound raw and painful. But this time, she did not cry into the silence of the ruins. This time, someone sat beside her, holding her hand, refusing to let go. The chains of years shattered piece by piece with every tear. And though fear still lingered inside her, something stronger had begun to grow, hope. But the world beyond the ruins was not silent forever, unseen by them. Shapes moved in the trees beyond the firelight. Others had come, others who carried the same fear her people once carried. They had seen the human and the cursed woman together. And soon, whispers would spread again, whispers sharper than any blade. Inside the ruins, she held his hand, trembling but unwilling to pull away. The secret she had kept hidden was finally revealed. And now it was no longer hers alone to carry. But outside, the shadows of her past were returning, and they would not forgive so easily. The fire burned low in the ruins, its light flickering softly across the cracked walls. The woman sat close to it, her hand still trembling in Aaron's. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her curse begin to lift, but the peace of that night was short-lived, unseen by them. Eyes watched from the edge of the forest. Whispers carried through the trees, voices filled with fear and anger. By morning, the quiet was broken. Aaron rose to gather wood. But as he stepped beyond the ruins, a group of figures emerged from the mist. They were tall, their cloaks marked with the symbols of her people. The woman gasped, her blood running cold. She knew those markings. They were her clan, the very ones who had abandoned her years ago. Their faces were carved with suspicion, their eyes filled with the same fear that had driven them to exile her. There she is, one of them hissed, pointing toward the ruins. The cursed one lives. Another's voice shook with anger. And now she has poisoned a human with her touch. The woman stumbled back, her heart racing. Her people had returned, but not with mercy. The whispers she had feared were no longer just echoes in her mind. They were alive, loud, ready to strike. Aaron stepped forward, his hand resting near. His knife, he didn't draw it yet, but his body stood firm between the woman and the approaching figures. "She's not cursed," he said clearly, his voice cutting through their murmurs. "She's alive. She's human like the rest of you. And you've all condemned her for nothing." The clan erupted in angry shouts. "Lies!" One shouted, "She brings death to anyone who touches her." Another cried. They moved closer, their eyes burning with fear disguised as hate. The woman's chest tightened, her legs trembling as she whispered, "Stop, Aaron, they won't listen." But Aaron did not move. His voice rose, calm yet unshakable. "I've touched her, and nothing happened to me. I am still standing, I am still breathing. Your curse is nothing but a story you told yourselves because you were afraid." The clan faltered for a moment, their eyes flicking between Aaron and the woman. They could see he was unharmed, strong, defiant, yet fear was not so easily broken. "She has deceived you." Their leader shouted, "If you continue to protect her, you will suffer as we all did. Step aside, human. This is not your fight." Aaron's jaw tightened. "This is my fight," he said, his voice steady, "because no one deserves to be abandoned. No one deserves to live in exile just because of fear." He glanced back at the woman, her wide eyes shining with both terror and awe. "And if you want to take her again, you'll have to go through me first." The ruins fell silent, the only sound the crackle of the dying fire. The woman felt her breath catch in her throat. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever spoken for her with such fire. Her people looked at Aaron with disbelief, their fear clashing with the evidence before their eyes. The leader of the clan stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. "Human, you do not understand what you are protecting. She is cursed, and curses do not break because you wish them to." The woman finally found her voice, her body shaking as she stepped out from behind Aaron. "No," she whispered, then louder, "No, I am not cursed." Her words silenced them for a moment. The clan turned, their faces pale with shock. She had not spoken to them since the day they left her. Now her voice rang against the walls of the ruins, filled with trembling strength. "You left me here to die because of a lie. You chained me with your fear, and I carried it for years. But this human, he proved you wrong." She lifted her trembling hand, holding it out in the firelight. "Look, he touched me, he held me, and nothing happened. Your curse was never real, only fear you could not face." The clan stirred uneasily, murmurs passing through them. Doubt flickered in their eyes, but their leader snarled, unwilling to surrender his control. "You speak like a fool. Fear is not so easily broken." Aaron stepped beside her, his hand taking hers again in plain sight of them all. The woman's body shivered as warmth spread through her. The clan gasped, some stepping back as if expecting lightning to strike. But nothing happened. No curse fell, no shadow rose. Only the sight of a human and an outcast woman standing together, unbroken. "You see?" Aaron said firmly, raising their joined hands. "Your fear has no power here." The woman's heart pounded as she looked at her people. For years she had dreamed of this moment, the day the chains around her life would shatter. And though their eyes still burned with doubt, she could see the cracks forming in their belief. But the leader's face twisted with rage. "If she stays alive, she will divide us. If you protect her, human, you declare yourself our enemy." He raised his hand, and others began to move forward, their weapons glinting in the faint light. The woman's breath caught, her body trembling, but this time she did not step back. This time she stood firm beside Aaron. Her fear had not vanished, but she would not run from it anymore. Not when she finally knew the truth. She was not cursed. She was alive, and she would not be silenced again. The ruins trembled with tension. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the broken stone. The clan circled closer, weapons glinting. Their faces twisted with fear and anger. The woman's heart raced, her body shaking, but she did not step back. For the first time in her life, she stood beside someone who refused to abandon her. Aaron's hand held hers tightly, his eyes fixed on the clan, unwavering. "Stay behind me," Aaron whispered, but she shook her head. "No. Not this time. I will not hide anymore." The clan's leader raised his staff, his voice booming. "She is cursed. She has poisoned this human with her touch. If we do not end this now, her shadow will spread again." The clan roared in agreement, their fear louder than reason. The woman's chest tightened. For years she had believed their words, carried them like a wound that never healed. But now she looked at Aaron, still standing strong at her side. His touch had not destroyed him. His warmth had not vanished. Her voice broke the silence, trembling but firm. "No, I am not cursed." The clan froze, shocked by the strength in her tone. Tears burned her eyes, but she raised her chin higher. "You left me here to die because of your fear. You told lies to hide your own weakness, but I survived. I lived. Even when you wanted me gone." Her words struck through the crowd like lightning. Some lowered their weapons, their eyes uncertain. Others muttered angrily, unwilling to let go of their fear. But the leader sneered. "Then prove it. If you are not cursed, touch him again in front of us all. Let us see the truth with our own eyes." The woman froze, her hands trembling. Her people's eyes pierced her like knives. For so long she had avoided touch, believed it would destroy anyone who came near. But Aaron squeezed her hand, steady and unshaken. "I'm right here," he whispered. "You don't need to fear them anymore." Her chest heaved with terror and hope. Slowly, she turned to face him. The firelight flickered across his face. Calm, waiting. With shaking hands, she lifted her other palm and placed it against his cheek. Her skin burned with fear, expecting some disaster. But nothing happened. Aaron smiled softly, leaning into her touch. Warmth spread between them. Not curse, not shadow, only life. The clan gasped, voices rising in disbelief. "She touched him." One cried, "And he still lives." Another shouted. The murmurs grew louder, anger mixing with confusion, fear clashing with truth. The leader's face twisted with rage. "No, this is a trick. She will bring ruin to us all." He raised his staff high, but before he could strike, Aaron stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise like steel. "Enough. You abandoned her for nothing but fear. You condemned your own because you were too weak to face the truth. But look at her now. She is alive. She is stronger than all of you, and you will not take her again." The woman's heart pounded at his words. Her hand slipped into his, and together they stood before the clan. The fire crackled behind them, its glow casting them in light while the others stood in shadow. The clan faltered, their eyes wide as they saw not a cursed woman and a doomed human, but two souls standing together, unbroken, one by one, weapons lowered. Fear gave way to doubt, and doubt gave way to shame. A few dropped their heads, unwilling to meet her eyes. The whispers grew weaker, fading into silence. Only the leader remained, trembling with fury, but even he could not deny what stood before him. No curse, no ruin, only truth. At last, the staff fell from his hand, clattering against the stone. The clan stepped back, their power broken, and in that silence, the woman felt chains fall from her heart, the weight of years lifted. Leaving her breathless, she turned to Aaron, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You stayed," she whispered. Her voice was filled with wonder, with disbelief, with gratitude deeper than words. "You held me when no one else would." Aaron's eyes softened, his hand brushing away her tears. "I told you, no one deserves to live alone forever." Her chest ached with a new kind of pain, not the pain of loneliness, but the overwhelming weight of belonging. For so long she had forgotten what warmth felt like. Now, standing in the ruins of her past, she finally felt it again, real, alive, human. The clan drifted away slowly, their voices hushed. Some looked back in shame, others in confusion, but none dared to call her cursed again. Their silence was not acceptance, but it was the first crack in their fear, and that was enough. As the fire burned brighter, the woman leaned against Aaron, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. Her body still trembled, but not from fear. This time, it was from the strange, fragile joy she barely understood. She whispered, almost afraid the words would vanish if she said them aloud. "I don't feel forgotten anymore." Aaron smiled, his arm wrapping gently around her. "You're not anymore." The ruins, once filled with silence and shadows, now carried the sound of two hearts beating side by side. And though the world beyond still held fear and struggle, the woman knew she would never face it alone again. After years of emptiness, she had finally found warmth, and this time it would not be taken from her.